Welcome to the Devy Devotional Podcast, a show devoted to college prospect evaluation with a fantasy football focus. With your hosts, John Arrington, Aaron Wilcox, and Andy Starr. This podcast brings you actionable strategies and player-driven analysis for your Devy, C2C, and Dynasty leagues. Let's dive in.
Let's dive into 2026 rookie comps. Welcome into the Devy Devotional, where we stay devoted to Devy. I'm your host, John Arrington, joined as always by Andy Starr and Aaron Wilcox. And tonight we decided it was time to have a little fun and try to comp the players in the 2026 rookie class to previous college players and or NFL players, probably mostly NFL players, I would assume, except for maybe a couple trash players that we'll comp to CFL players, or maybe UFL players, whatever we get to. So yeah, we're hoping to have a lot of fun on this one. Obviously, on the last podcast, it was a little controversial. We called out the Devy analyst, we called out the Devy space, and we just lost Andy. Hopefully, he's not mad about us calling him out. So we did that, and we got a lot of feedback, some good, some not as good, and everything. But we did kind of drum up some interest in the conversation of Devy and Devy analysis and all that kind of stuff. So we appreciate everyone that kind of chimed in and did all that kind of stuff, except for Felix, and we appreciate everyone else. But it was really cool. We're hoping to not be as controversial tonight, but I bet there will be a couple of controversial comps here and there, because I know one or two of mine. I know that the Devy space is not going to like. I'll say that at the very least. But before we get into all that, let's check in with the boys. Aaron, how are you doing tonight?
Well, I'm doing well, and I will give some stylistic comps very often on this podcast, as I enjoy breaking these guys down from a film standpoint and watching how they play, how they operate, and potentially translate. So I always enjoy that aspect of prospect evaluation and chatting about that on the podcast here. There are a few comps, especially at the quarterback position, that I don't feel that strong about this year, but we'll discuss that here. I think it'll be an interesting conversation.
Absolutely, Andy. You were having some technical difficulties, but you're back now. How are you doing tonight, buddy?
Good. Yeah, I don't know what was going on. Every now and then it'll just say trying to reconnect, and then if I'm muted when that happens, it will never let me unmute unless I go back and start over. So here I am. Hopefully you guys can hear me. It sounds like you can. I see people nodding. But yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to try to stay unbiased when doing comps for guys that I like, but so the comps that I did for this show are mainly guys that I don't like, and maybe that there's a reverse bias there as well, but I felt like I was fair to them as well. I didn't pick bad players to comp them to. I just picked players that maybe weren't as good but still had bright spots in the NFL, but something that you maybe could expect from some of these players that I don't like, to say hey, I don't think these guys are going to be nobodies, but maybe we're just valuing them a little bit too high.
Absolutely. And another thing that came about from the podcast last week was, people saying, hey, you're sitting here touting your Garrett Nussmeier hatred and things like that, but what were you wrong about? What did you change your mind about? Things like that. So last week I challenged you guys to find a player that you that you are higher than consensus or lower than consensus on. Tonight, I'm challenging you guys, and I did not give you any notice, so it doesn't have to be this second, but maybe by the end of the pod, if you can do it. I challenge you guys, Aaron and Andy, to come up with a player that you were wrong on this season, and you're not allowed to use Ahmad Hardy, because I think we've all agreed that we're wrong about Ahmad Hardy. And who's the other one? There's another running back that you guys are not allowed to use, because we've already talked about those two running backs enough, I think. But beyond that, any other players, I'm going to go ahead and just put it out there for mine. I'll admit I was wrong about Makai Lemon. I'm going to admit defeat to Andy. Now that is not me saying that I'm as high as others on Makai Lemon, because I'm still lower than consensus on him. But he went out and just he obviously, him and Lincoln Riley, listen to the pod clearly, and they went out and said, we are going to make sure that he has his two best games immediately after John just craps all over him, and so he did. We did the grudge match. Immediately after the grudge match, he goes out and does 2 receptions for 18 yards, and so I do as many as many victory laps as I possibly can. But then immediately after that, Makai goes and does changes his game completely. His ADOT is the highest it's been in those 2 weeks, the highest it's been all season. His yak ability, his everything about it is just better these past 2 weeks. Now, 2 weeks are not everything, and that's why I'm still going to end up being lower than consensus on him. But just the fact that I was comparing him to Luther Burden is not fair. And so I'm going to give Makai Lemon his flowers today and say, sir, you are not Luther Burden. You are much better than that, but you're also maybe not, better than Jordan Tyson, like people want to put you up there too. So I was wrong about Makai Lemon. I'm admitting it after just a few weeks of touting how much I did not like him, even though we said I wasn't that low on him. But I'm hoping that you guys can also be willing to be wrong on a player. Like I said, if you have one in particular right now, great. If not, try to come up with it by the end of the night. And if not, we'll always do it on the next pod too.
Oh, I have one that sticks out for me at the beginning of the season, and I don't know if I was necessarily wrong on him, but I didn't think he would have the season that he's having, and that's Louisville wide receiver Chris Bell, who's still getting like first round grades, which I don't necessarily agree with, but for a guy who had never had a season over 2 yards per route run his entire career, never had more than 800 yards, going into his senior year with a new quarterback, I didn't have high hopes. So to do what he's doing now, he's probably going to have 1,000-yard season by the time it's all said and done. He's at over 2.5 yards per route run. Like I said, I don't think he's deserving of a first round rookie pick, like some people are saying. But I was out completely on him. I wasn't gonna even take him in the first 4 rounds of a rookie draft. And now I feel like he's a pretty safe mid to late second round pick, depending on draft capital. But that's the one that sticks out. It might not be a good one because I don't feel like I was dead wrong on it. Well, I mean, like I said, I was out. So for me to be back in, for me, feels like I was dead wrong. So in a way, it is.
I like it. You were definitely out on him. So I think that, whether you love him or not, and once again, I just said the same thing about Lemon. That doesn't mean all of a sudden, just because I'm admitting I was wrong about Lemon, that all of a sudden he's my wide receiver 1 or anything like that. So it's okay to be wrong and still not be like, oh my God, this is my favorite player ever as well. Aaron is deep in thought over there.
Yeah, I am thinking about it a little bit, but I was also going back and trying to look because I'm like, I can't totally say that I was off of Ahmad Hardy. I think I was with you guys in the middle, at least saying okay, the transfer up to the SEC level, right? We have to be skeptical about that. But I also rostered him in 2 of my 4 C2C leagues this
Nice.
off season. And I did trade him
Well, I
in
think it
1.
was when we were doing the tiers of where the players were, and we were trying to put him in, and we had him in tier 2. We said he might be tier 1 soon, and you were like, I think he's gonna be tier 3. But like I said, I think we've all kind of taken an L on Ahmad Hardy already, so I'm not counting that one.
Yeah, and that's fair. But we knew regression was coming, right? Nobody starts off the season as hot against that low level of competition and just keeps it up against SEC play. There's no doubt Ahmad Hardy's been really, really good as a player. And I think I traded for him, not to go off on a tangent of this, but I traded Cam Davis and Richard Young for him last season in C2C. So I was pretty happy with getting Ahmad Hardy. But anyways, so let's see. Who was I too low on? I'm going to say Casey Concepcion, Texas A&M wide receiver. Yep. A guy who was definitely intriguing. I wanted to acquire some shares after his freshman season because I was really intrigued by the skill set. He was a very effective underneath to intermediate type of receiver. He did not show signs of growth there as a second-year player at NC State, and then now transferring to Texas A&M. I thought he'd be kind of more of the same, taking on kind of that underneath type of role. And ultimately, like, they have Mario Craver there. I know we were all kind of interested in Craver this season, who's been good until recently. He's dropped off and been banged up and everything else. Casey Concepcion has been that steady wide receiver in the SEC for Texas A&M, who is just having a great season overall as a team. And he's a big part of that reason why. He's been more effective down the field. They've unleashed him. He's developed that part of his game and actually shown us he can win on all three levels of the field. So it's just really impressive. I did not know that he would necessarily, rise this season, display that versatile skill set. He is what we wanted Antonio Williams, Clemson wide receiver, to be, right? We wanted Antonio Williams to expand his game and show that explosiveness down the field. That's not there for Williams, but it is there for Casey Concepcion, who's hats off to him having a great season and a breakout year. He may declare, or he has one more year of eligibility as well.
I actually think that's a really good one. Honestly, I think we could probably all say all three of us were wrong about Casey Concepcion. So I think that's a really good one. I definitely know I was out on him. And to say that he hasn't at least somewhat changed my mind it would be false.
Yeah, I think you brought him up in our chat like earlier this week or late last week. Like, what did we think about Casey Concepcion? And I was like, I liked him first year, then I hated him. Now I kind of like him again. And that's just kind of the roller coaster we've been on with him. But yeah, I mean, same thing with like Chris. Maybe I think I even like Casey Concepcion a little bit more than like a Chris Bell type player at this point in time. Just because of that early breakout and bouncing back this year. But yeah, I was definitely out because that last season was like really, really bad. But certainly turned it around, and whatever Texas A&M did with him is working beautifully.
I agree. And yeah, I would definitely have Concepcion over Chris Bell. So that's why I said I think it works for all three of us, even though Aaron's the one that brought it up. And not to completely throw Aaron under the bus, but if he couldn't come up with one, I had one for him, whether he wants to agree with it or not. And that's Jordan Lyle of Miami. He might not want to, he might want to say, hey, there's been injuries and stuff like that. But I don't know. I think we can go ahead and say that ship has sailed.
Yeah, that would be a fair one. He has been just garbage this year, and like you said, you could blame injuries, whatever, but he has not bounced back. But very efficient as a freshman, so maybe there's that post-hype type of season, depending what's going on. But it's always interesting when we see these injuries, like the Nick Singleton. We don't even know if he's injured on the season, but for a player to have such a drastic drop off, it's always surprising. Has to be in the back of your mind. But we know Singleton's out of eligibility. Lyle's been a big faller, but we'll see because he has a couple more years left.
Yeah, and Lyle definitely was injured. He missed time, so I mean, he was obviously injured. He has been back recently. He has not been looking good. So, I mean, we could still say it is injury related and things. Like I said, I wasn't trying to throw you under the bus. It was just one that popped into my head like, oh man, this is definitely a player that you were super hyped about and probably not so much anymore. But, I think I as much as I want to be at the forefront of Devy analysis and say, hey, like, let's be willing to be different and all that kind of stuff, we also have to be willing to say when we're wrong and do all that. So I don't want to be the one that's gaslighting other people or anything like that. We can admit when we're wrong as well, and we can admit when we're right. Just make sure that you give it back to us when we do get those calls, right? So I think that is enough about that. You guys ready to do some player comps? Alrighty, let's dive into Devy. Alrighty, Alrighty, like I said, we are doing the 2026 class now. No one knows who the hell is coming out and who's not in the 2026 class. So I'm comping anyone who's available. If they're a sophomore, nope, not giving them a comp. If they're a junior, senior, or fifth year player, or true by those I mean true junior, senior, true fifth year player, whatever you want to call it. Then I did give them a comp. I did not comp every player, but however, I did come up with 11. We did not talk about our comps ahead of time, and so I'm hoping that Andy and Aaron have different ones than I do, and then we can try to get a solid class list going here. I have some fun ones. I have some ones that I feel very good about, and I have some other ones that are like, man, it was extremely difficult, especially for these QBs, trying to come up with some comps. That I think that was the one I struggled with the most. The wide receivers, for the most part, I feel like I actually did a pretty good job with. We'll have to see if the boys agree here, but I did not get any running back comps. I know Andy had at least a couple. Actually, that's not true. I did come up with one on the fly right before we started, so I have one running back comp that I'll take credit for. Other than that, hopefully, like I said, the boys brought theirs, but. Where do we want to start? I mean, does it really matter? Obviously, the QBs are probably the most difficult to do. So should we go ahead and get those out of the way, or should we save those for last?
Well, I only had one QB comp, and I brought it up in our chat earlier today, and it was for Fernando Mendoza, who at this point seems like the only guy besides maybe Ty Simpson that is going to be coming out as like a potential first round draft pick. That we don't expect Dante Moore. I think he's already announced. I don't know if he's officially announced, but it seems like the announcement and all the speculation is he's going back. So at this point, it's Mendoza and Simpson as potential first round picks. And I was looking back, I tried to do as recent of a comp as possible. So I always worked back from the 2025 draft class, and if I couldn't find one there, I'd go back to the next year, so on and so forth. But in this case, I made it back to Kyle Trask before I found something that I thought felt pretty similar to who Mendoza is. And the reason is because I think they were both redshirt juniors in their final year. They both had a really highly efficient passing seasons in that final season. Obviously, we're in the middle of Mendoza's right now. But if you look at Kyle Trask's numbers as a redshirt junior, he had 43 touchdowns to only 8 interceptions, 68% completion percentage, which, let's see where Mendoza is right now. He's right around 72%, pretty similar. The yards per attempt was pretty similar, 9.4 for Mendoza, 9.8 for Trask. ADOT very similar, 9.2 for Mendoza and 10.1 for Trask. Very similarly sized, both 6'5". Trask, Aaron brought up, he had more of a beer belly than Mendoza does, and that's reflected in the mobility too. But Trask wasn't like a nobody on the ground. Like, he still had positive rushing yards. It wasn't like one of those guys that just took sacks and ended the season with like negative 200 rushing yards. He still like could escape the pocket from time to time, but he certainly wasn't known for that. So that was really like, I didn't want to go too far back in the comps. And Trask is I believe he's a second round pick, a late second round pick. So day 2 guy. I think if Mendoza was in a stronger class, he probably ends up being a second round pick. But since he is where he is right now, quarterback is king. Everybody wants to find their next franchise quarterback. So if you're in the top 10, you almost feel like, well, if we don't have a quarterback, we got to take one now. And that's why the Mendozas of the world get pushed up. So that was the closest one I could get to, in recent memory.
I definitely won't hate on it. Like I said, it was very difficult going back trying to find somebody who was like extremely similar. The only thing I will say is that Trask definitely threw a lot more. than Mendoza is. You know, like even though they had kind of similar like adjusted yards per attempt and things like that. Like Trask was throwing for about 360 yards per game in his true junior his redshirt senior year, I should say. And so I think that 360 yards versus I want to say Mendoza's sitting at like 260. So I mean, you're almost talking about like 100 yards per game difference there. So you definitely there's more attempts per game. There's obviously the completion rate was similar and everything. Like I said, it's difficult to come up with an exact comp, but you're looking at similar size, similar everything. My comp for Fernando Mendoza is kind of hilarious. So I don't know if Aaron wants me to go or if he has a good one. All right, you want me to go? My comp for Fernando Mendoza is AJ McCarron, out of what I believe Georgia. Is that right? And
Bama guy.
Hell,
I think.
yeah,
Oh, Bama. Yeah, Bama. That's right. I honestly I went back years and years trying to find someone that was really similar in like all aspects. And honestly, I can't even say that they're like perfect or anything like that. But it's just so weird because you just don't see guys that are 6'5" that have that do things like the way Mendoza does, where he's not really pushing the ball down the field that much, but he makes some big time throws and things like that. And so the best I can find, even though there's no advanced metrics on AJ McCarron because it's before PFF was around, before they started charting and things. So I don't have big time throw rate for him. I don't have intended air yards, and all I'm really going off of is their size, their yards per game, their adjusted yards per attempt, like things like that. And honestly, it matches up pretty damn well, all things considered. But I think more importantly, what you should probably gather from these two comps here, and we'll see what Aaron has, is that we're talking about backup NFL quarterbacks here. We're not talking about NFL studs for either one of us. So I think that is probably my best comp. I have another comp after Aaron goes that is my kind of comp, but it's actually another NFL backup, so it's not very different.
Yeah, interesting. So Fernando Mendoza, he's definitely benefiting from a pass happy and fantasy friendly offense, right? But there are some things to his profile that are intriguing. I mean, he has the size, 6'5", 225 pounds. He's mobile enough. He hasn't thrown a lot of interceptions. He's been pretty safe overall with the ball, and definitely leading that team to success. He's showed up in big moments, and so there's intrigue there. I think he certainly has the talent to go in the first round. I think NFL teams are just going to be so desperate to draft a quarterback, right? He could get drafted high. So I still think that there's potential for him to be a solid quarterback. Now, like John said, Andy said, these comps, they're not perfect by any means, but they're also not highlighting him as like the next Tom Brady. And I think a realistic comp, maybe an expectation, could be similar to a Daniel Jones. And keep in mind, Daniel Jones is a little bit more risky, right, with the ball, interceptions, fumbles, that kind of thing, than Mendoza is, right? That's where the comp fault maybe is. But you see maybe some similarities there as a passer, as a stylistic type of player for Mendoza. And I've seen comps out there, people are throwing around like Sam Darnold. And again, Sam Darnold, he throws a few too many interceptions. I don't love that comp
Much
either.
more gunslinger-ish.
Yeah, right. Fernando Mendoza, a little bit more safe with the ball. So I think that, the Daniel Jones comp is just from a style standpoint and from maybe like a rushing standpoint, sure. But I think Mendoza is at least more safe with the ball. And so that's an intriguing part of his profile. Versus, we can move to the other quarterback that I thought a comp of, and that's Ty Simpson. And I do struggle as well with a perfect comp for him. But I settled in at, he's like a little Joe Burrow light. And I say LITE because the production is much lighter. The mobility is not quite there, right? And obviously the success, the championship pedigree is not going to be there. So that's why I say it's a light. But you see the way he plays, he has even went out and said he models his game after Joe Burrow. He also mentioned some other quarterbacks that he plays similarly to. And, there's Jared Goff. I don't really see it, right? I mean, I see some of that because Ty Simpson would prefer to be more of a pocket passer. Okay, that's what Goff is. He also said Baker. I don't see it at all. Ty Simpson is not a Baker type of quarterback. Different, build. I mean, Ty Simpson's small-ish. He's 6'2", 208. But I mean, Baker's smaller than that. But they're just not the same with their tenacity, with their, style. And I also heard Stafford out there, and I'm like, I don't love that comp either. I mean, I could see it in some ways, but again, I don't think the arm talent is just the same. But you see that Ty Simpson, though he has some inconsistency to his game, he's again not that turnover prone. He can run a pretty competent offense out there passing the game. And you have to keep in mind Alabama's running back situation and just their running game in general. They have a bunch of talented ish dudes, or you'd think like recruit wise, Alabama should be able to get a running game going. No, it's all been Ty Simpson all year long. He has taken on the brunt of an inefficient rushing game, and he has had to kind of put the team on his back with passing. And as a first-time starter, I know he's been around for a while, a few years in college, but really no game reps or very limited experience for him to actually get comfortable in building. I think he's done a pretty good job considering that. He doesn't have a long history as a starter, and usually we see high-end guys emerge with multiple years of starting experience. So for being a guy who's kind of just thrown into this offense this year, like many freshmen or underexperienced guys are. I mean, he's been pretty sharp. So again, I'm not saying he is the next this player, but there is that stylistic comparison there.
Wow, that's much higher praise than I thought we were going to get for Ty Simpson there. After all that, I don't think you're going to like my comp for Ty Simpson. But, real quick, before we move on to that one, I did have one other comp for Fernando Mendoza, and like I said, this is not perfect by any means, but it's Mason Rudolph. And it was more of a size and like arm strength ability, kind of profile. But honestly, Rudolph pushed the ball down the field more than Mendoza does. It's not a perfect comp or anything like that. But Mason has kind of been that, like, he could be a starter. He has started. He has had some decent weeks, and here or there. He's never been able to consistently put it all together. That's kind of how I feel about Mendoza. And so, like, I don't think it's a perfect comp by any means. And you could probably point to 3 different or 4 different metrics and say, nah, dude. But like, that's kind of where I'm like, that might maybe not be his ceiling, but like that would be like his realistic ceiling. If I were there. But for my comp for Ty Simpson, and once again, these are not perfect comps, but it's just what I really see when I'm looking at the numbers here is Matt Corral without the rushing. And so, there's decent intended air yards, there's a decent big time throw rate, but there's not, you're not scoring a lot of touchdowns. Now Corral had a really bad interception year his junior year, but then his senior year he cleaned it up. And so I kind of like looking at their numbers from their actually both of their senior years. Looking at those numbers, they're actually pretty damn close. The difference is that Corral had like 600 rushing yards and Simpson has like 60 or whatever it is. They're basically the same size. They're the same weight. They're the same everything. After talking about Joe Burrow and Matt Stafford and all that kind of stuff, you probably hate the comp. But honestly, like I said, the numbers are pretty damn close. And now this is me. I was a big Matt Corral fan. Now that was also before I included intended air yards and big time throw rate into my analysis. So that there's a reason why I include those things now. And it's not to say that Corral never hit it in those things, but he actually did fall off in his senior year, which would have at least given me some reason to not be as high on him as I was in the past. And so, just looking at those things, like there's a lot of thresholds that they hit similarly and everything. And so I think my comp for Ty Simpson is Matt Corral, but without the rushing.
I don't mind either. I mean, the joke, anytime you incite Joe Burrow, it's like, is this guy really that good? I don't know, but the light would have to be in all capital letters for me. But for me, like, and I just did this really quick. I was like, oh, I didn't do a Ty Simpson comp, but I went back a few years. I found two guys that I think I would feel comfortable comping him to. One is kind of a caveat. It's Drew Lock's senior year at Missouri because he was like a 4-year starter. But then, he was kind of a gunslinger his first 3 years and then lowered it, got rid of the interceptions his senior year, started throwing shorter passes, a little bit more efficient. But I think Drew Lock also a little bit taller, a little bit bigger, very similar passing stats if you look at their senior seasons. But again, Drew Lock was a 4-year starter or like 3.5-year starter, so much more experience there. The other one, different sized guy, but again, the guy who waited until his like senior year to actually start and then had like a killer year, way better than Ty Simpson, and that's Ohio State's Dwayne Haskins, RIP. But he had 50 touchdowns, but again, very similar stylistically to the passing concepts that that Simpson is operating in at Alabama. It's not as efficient scoring wise because he's not throwing for 50 touchdowns and he's definitely not throwing the ball as much as a guy like Haskins. But I think the arm talent is similar. So both of those guys, high picks, first round picks, second round picks, didn't necessarily work out. That's kind of how I feel like Ty Simpson's future is. Like he's going to start games in the NFL. He'll probably get a season or two to start somewhere, but then kind of matriculate into a backup role somewhere for a long term.
Well, I think so much has been said about QBs having at least 20, 25 starts, like things like that under his belt, and Simpson definitely does not have that. It's so weird because people are like, forcing him to come out essentially, but he doesn't have to come out. And, he's only started 12 games, 13 games, whatever it is. So I don't know. Maybe he could become something. If he puts another year under his belt, maybe he could grow and be more. I haven't seen enough personally, but a player I have seen enough personally, but yet gets no love whatsoever. Except from the three of us here is Darian Mensah, and I have one final comp for him. Honestly, I'm not going to lie. I honestly thought that he ran more than he does. He does not run that much. Darian Mensah, my comp is Jared Goff. And I honestly think it's a decent comp they have similar ADOT, similar big time throw rate, similar, like neither one of them run at all. But Goff was fairly safe with the ball. Mensah actually has a slightly better turnover-worthy play rate than Goff even did coming out. And obviously, we know Goff was kind of a project, or maybe he shouldn't have been drafted as highly as he was, and all that kind of stuff. But he's turned into a solid starting QB in the NFL. So who knows if it's going to be day one or whatever for Mensah. But I kind of, the more I look at the numbers, I really see the comps and see the similarities there between the two players, and it could be a Jared Goff level of NFL career for Darian Mensah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't mind it. I don't have a comp for him, but he is that accurate, kind of safe type of passer. Like you said, not a dynamic rusher at this state, though I think he has more mobility than what he's actually put out there this season, right? So, yeah, very fair. And going back to the Ty Simpson comp as well, just to be clear, you guys typically do comps where you kind of expect this guy is like a similar level prospect as the guy that you comp to, right? You say, this is what I expect this guy to be talent-wise, maybe outcome-wise. Outcome might differ a little bit, right? Versus
Sure.
I just do, style, right? That is purely a style versus an outcome. So my comp is always going to be taken or should be taken differently because that is not the outcome by any means that
Yeah,
anybody's
it's not meant to be
anticipating.
hot takey or anything like that. You're
Yeah.
saying that stylistically he
Like he
looks like
wants to
this.
play like this player, right? But is he as
Right.
good? No. But I mean, that's the other thing we have to consider about Joe Burrow is that after his 2018 season, let's say he went out, right? He was eligible to go to the NFL
Yeah,
draft. That was actually a very pedestrian season. So a lot more similar in some ways to what we're seeing out of, not even as good as what we're seeing out of a guy like a Ty Simpson. So, it
sure.
took, two of the best receivers in the NFL, plus great other positions to come together to really create that super team for LSU and to help Joe take that next step. So we'll see if Simpson comes back. Probably enough time spent on him, but he is a big time
Yeah.
player in this class, right? A pretty highly anticipated quarterback. And you know what? It's too bad that Mensah isn't more highly anticipated. I think there's a chance he's probably not part of this class. So I know he's kind of our guy, right? In just in general, like as a sleeper and whatnot. Darian Mensah's a stud at the quarterback position. I think he probably takes another year in college.
He probably should, honestly. And I mean, at this point, if no one's giving him the love, then take another year and grow and become the stud that we think he can be at the very least. I mean, he's had some amazing games. He's had some not as amazing games, recently, but he's also playing some pretty stout defenses and things like that. So I think we can say he's been pretty damn good. He's still my QB1 in the class. If he actually comes out or not is the difference there. But why don't we? That's all I got for QBs. If you guys want more QB comps, I don't know. Hit me up, slide my DMs or something. I'll try and come up with more. But that's about all I got. But I do have a lot of wide receiver takes here, and I'll just go ahead and start here. Jordan Tyson, my wide receiver one. I'm assuming the wide receiver one for all three of us here. I don't think that anything has changed there. I have two comps. One is more of a realistic comp, even though like they're not that different as far as like the ceiling versus realistic. And then I have a ceiling comp for him as well. I have Garrett Wilson, and I know it's not a perfect match size wise. This is when I was telling Aaron there were like most of them I stuck pretty similar, like size wise, height wise, all that kind of stuff. But this one, you're looking at a slightly different. I think Garrett Wilson is like 6 foot, 180 or whatever, and Jordan Tyson's closer to like 6'2", 200, whatever it might be. So it's not perfect, but I just see a lot of similarities, like play style wise, like route running wise, ability to get open, yak ability, things like that you love to see with G Will. Obviously, it has not been a perfect NFL career for Garrett Wilson. I think we can also explain away a lot of it with Zach Wilson and everything else that he's had to deal with QB wise, and say that if Jordan Tyson was anything close to Garrett Wilson, I think I'd be pretty damn happy. My ceiling comp, which is more closely related as far as height, size, things like that, is CD Lamb. And there are definitely some similarities when you look at the two. I'm not saying that I think Jordan Tyson is CD Lamb, because CD definitely hit some thresholds that Tyson has not been able to hit, whether it's his fault or not. I definitely saw, or I had CD, or held CD to a higher regard when he was coming out than I am to Tyson. So that's why I'm saying this is more of a ceiling. Like, we can say he hasn't had the best QBs. He hasn't, he hasn't always been 100% healthy, blah, blah, blah. If he was, maybe he could be CD Lamb. But I do really like the Garrett Wilson one, though.
Yeah, nice comp. I mean, at least I did like the Garrett Wilson one. I don't really like the CD one because I think CD just wins in so many additional ways down the field and this and that with dominance at the high point. And I think there's a lot of really great traits that Jordan Tyson displays, but there's also a little bit of that injury history, like you said, too. And we're seeing a bit of that crop its head for Garrett Wilson at the NFL level. It's mostly for him, really, not been an injury-prone thing, though. It's just been poor quarterback play, right? But we're seeing some of that. So I did like that comp. I'm curious if Andy has any other thoughts. Otherwise, I mean, I have a couple of wide receivers here to talk about, too.
Yeah, I didn't comp Tyson just because for me, analytically, it's tough to do based on him missing his entire sophomore year, which to do like a 1-for-1 with somebody like that is, kind of tricky for someone like me to do. But I like the Garrett Wilson comp because I like Jordan Tyson. So if he's as good as Garrett Wilson in the NFL, that would be fantastic. Yeah, both of them like in their best season, over yards per out run in their junior years actually. Um, Jordan Tyson, especially last year, spent a lot more time in the slot than a guy like Garrett Wilson did. But I don't think that's it makes them a different player or anything like that. They're both true X receivers. So yeah, I like the comp. Like I said, I didn't make one for Jordan Tyson, unfortunately, but he is, like you said, still my wide receiver one.
I suppose he could be like a Jordan Addison type of style. I mean, I'm not saying, again, the quality's the same necessarily, but I mean, Addison was pretty highly regarded coming out.
Sure.
And some versatility there. Can play inside, outside. Pretty good route runner. Pretty good athlete overall.
And we can't say what exactly Addison would be if he wasn't behind J. Jeff for his entire career as as an
Right.
NFL player either. So
Right. And he's
yeah,
got
I
nose
don't.
for the
I
end
don't have
zone
one.
too, like
Yep,
Addison does. And I know Tyson does really well too, right? He's a scoring monster for fantasy purposes, at least.
I like it. Aaron, you said you had one for us. What you got?
Well, we already mentioned Mekhi Lemon at the beginning of the show. John came clean. Andy's been touting him for a while. I will make a high end comp, at least stylistic wise. And some might call me a little bit lazy with it. I get that. I do. But I'm going to comp Mekhi Lemon to Amon-Ra St. Brown. So just
Ooh,
looking overall throughout their aspects of the profile, Amon-Ra St. Brown and Mekhi Lemon, like overall, pretty productive players in college. Not a perfect profile, right? It's not like this can't miss type of guy, but I mean, still productive, mostly an intermediate to an underneath threat who displays good hands, route running, solid enough frame. Not a huge player by any means, but solid enough, right? Is going to work. And obviously, there's that school connection too. So that's where the lazy part comes in. But I do actually think there's something there with the play styles. Again, some size similarity. It's not perfect by any means, but in the role that Mekhi Lemon will likely be asked to play at the NFL level. I mean, I think it could be an Amon-Ra St. Brown type of projection, at least in that role. Mekhi Lemon, I still think he's very talented. College wide receiver. I kind of stayed out of the argument. You notice I didn't really say one side or another, like throughout those podcasts that John and Andy kind of went back and forth, and I was not present for their feud or their debate podcast. But I do think that Mekhi Lemon is a good player ultimately, so I had to come up with a pretty good player for a comp too.
we'll let Andy finish this one off since it's his
Yeah,
baby.
yeah. Well, I like the comp, obviously.
Okay.
When we were looking at, because we've been looking at the yards per route run thing earlier this week, and the
Yeah.
2020 COVID year really messed up a lot of Big Ten and Pac-12 seasons, and
Yep.
Amon-Ra was part of that. And like he only played in like 5 regular season games that season, so it's hard. And like for whatever reason that year they decided to not use him in the slot primarily, which
Yeah.
obviously we know that Amon-Ra St. Brown is a slot receiver. And it's a good thing that I didn't like do this because back then I was more of a yards per team pass attempt guy, and Amon-Ra St. Brown like met all those thresholds for me, and I was like, oh, this guy's good. But like from a yards per route run standpoint, at that point in time, he wasn't that good. Whereas Mekhi Lemon is fantastic at it. He has been, especially this year, and also last year. But I think that's more has to do with the COVID year and like Keaton Slovis being one of the worst quarterbacks of all time. And I forget who was coaching USC at the time, but that coach was awful as well. So there was a lot of things going on poorly at USC in 2020, unfortunately. But I think that is a great comp. Like stylistically, they're both going to be like high end, or we already know Amon-Ra is a high end slot receiver in the NFL. Mekhi Lemon can do that same thing. Like he can be that guy that it's 3rd and 3, like the ball's going to Mekhi Lemon, like because he's going to be open. Um, so I like that. The I I obviously like did the hyperbole comp of Malik Neighbors. I know that that's not they're not really the same player, guys. I know that, but they're both really good receivers. So in that sense, they are comped. And I brought up another guy too. Who's the LSU slot receiver with Odell Beckham? Jarvis Landry.
Jarvis
Yeah,
Landry.
Jarvis.
I was looking at Jarvis Landry, and he lined up pretty similarly to Mekhi Lemon as well. Which, I think he's better than Jarvis Landry, but that wouldn't be like a terrible NFL career to have.
He's probably more athletic than Landry was. Landry was just a badass receiver. He wasn't even like athletic or anything like that. He was just a good receiver. All right, so I feel like obviously anytime you're putting out Amon-Ra, Malik Neighbors, like players like that, you're probably assuming a ceiling comp at that point. I don't know that I feel we can truly comp Amon-Ra to Mekhi Lemon or Mekhi Lemon to Amon-Ra. I do think that whole COVID year and everything completely screwed. Like, there's no way, not that we're saying Mekhi Lemon's going to be a fourth round pick, but like, there's no way in hell Amon-Ra's a fourth round pick if the COVID year doesn't completely screw everything up, at the very least third or second round or something like that. So obviously things got screwed up there, but I think I have a pretty good comp for Mekhi Lemon. Now that I've admitted I was wrong, I'm wrong, I have a pretty good comp, and it's Lad McConkey for the Chargers. I honestly feel like they are almost the same player. Like, I really do. And that's not to say that Georgia used Lad the way that USC is using Mekhi, but look at how Lad is being used as an NFL player, and that's how I feel like Mekhi Lemon's going to be used. And that's to say, I feel like he's always going to be like a wide receiver 2. You could even say a high-end wide receiver 2, or like, the 1B or whatever, but he's never going to be that, like, the stud that, that you're like, oh my God, I have the wide receiver 1 overall on my team or anything like that. And that's kind of where I am with Lemon. I really feel like Lad McConkey is actually a pretty solid comp there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't hate it. It does line up with my yards per route run theories and everything, but the difference obviously is Lad McConkey production in college wasn't there. I think like his best season was 750 yards, and then in his senior year,
Georgia. I mean, you could say that about any Georgia wide receiver, though.
Right,
George Pickens, or
he was also right.
Brock Bowers, and
all of them seem to be hurt too. McConkey was hurt like most of his redshirt junior year, but yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, if Mekhi Lemon, I think he's better than Lad McConkey. He's definitely going to get better draft capital.
And they're
Lad
almost
McConkey.
the same size too, like almost like to the pound.
Yeah, stylistically, I mean, I can see the similarities maybe with the route running, but then I think it kind of stops there. Like, I think the ball skills are much superior for Lemon. The production a little bit higher end for sure, but yeah, again, I don't necessarily hate all aspects of it, but as an over-encompassing, like, similarities-wise, I don't know if I think that's quite it. But obviously he's not Neighbors, right? So
no, he's definitely not Neighbors.
I'm settling in at Amon-Ra, yeah.
We don't have to agree about all of them, but yeah, I don't know. I thought of it while I was at work, and it honestly, like, I started looking at the numbers and everything, and I was like, I kind of love this. Andy, I don't think you've brought a comp up for us yet.
Yeah. All right. Well, since we're sticking with the wide receivers, I'll throw Carnell Tate into the mix here, and I think I nailed this one. Carnell Tate is Brian Thomas Jr. And the reason I say that is, one, they're both playing behind maybe a generational wide receiver prospect, Brian Thomas to Malik Neighbors, and then obviously Carnell Tate is behind Jeremiah Smith, who we all love. You could say Carnell Tate broke out in his true sophomore year, but I don't think that it was quite as good as what we're seeing this year. He was still probably third in the pecking order, even if Emeka Egbuka last year maybe missed some time from, some snaps here and there, a game. I don't remember exactly, but if you're just going from like a yards per route run standpoint, again, like it took Carnell Tate until this year to like cross that 2.0 threshold. Now he's like well over 3 and well over 2 for his career. Same thing with Brian Thomas Jr. Like they thrived behind like these elite wide receivers, and it's not because they're just like benefiting from like that system, that they're actually like also very talented. They just happen to be behind somebody who's like uber talented. Similarly sized too. They both, like I said, play the traditional X receiver. They're out wide. They don't really spend too much time in the slot. I think that it's a fairly decent comp. They're probably going to be drafted in a similar spot too. So I think it might be a nail on the head type situation. But I don't know if you guys have something different.
I'm not sure that I believe that Carnell Tate is the athlete that BTJ is. So I gave him a T. Higgins comp, and I don't love either comp, honestly. It was difficult for me to find a comp for Carnell Tate. So that's all I will say. I'm not even saying that T. Higgins is a great comp. It's just the closest comp that I could really come up with. And I don't hate the BTJ comp. I just don't know that he's that level of athlete. Like I think there's always been questions about his athleticism. He's definitely answered some of them this season. I don't think you can sit here like and question it like, oh, he can't possibly be an NFL athlete at this point. Like that, I think those questions are already answered. But I don't know that he's like go run a 4.4 flat at 6.5 or whatever like BTJ did. Like I don't think he's quite there either. So sometimes there's just not good comps for these players, or we can't really think of them. I know Aaron said he didn't really have one for Tate, so we'll go ahead and move on. And I have one. Actually, no, I have another one that I don't exactly love. So I'll just throw it out quickly, and you guys tell me if you hate it or whatever, and we can move on because we're already, getting somewhat close to an hour here. I have Elijah Surratt as Nico Collins, and I'm not 100% comping the players here because, like, I think Nico Collins probably has a little more like deep threat ability than Surratt has. But like honestly, if you look at their numbers, like the A dot and the yak and everything kind of line up, the size, the speed, like everything kind of lines up. Once again, you cannot look at Nico Collins' profile and be like, oh, I can comp this to someone else because it's a weird thing with Michigan. I think there was also a COVID year in there as well. So like, it's not the easiest thing to comp to, but honestly, like, I kind of like that one.
Yeah, I kind of like that too. I actually had a different player though. I also comped Elijah Surratt. I said Alec Manor. So both are 6'2", pretty well built guys, right? Not true speedsters, but they're athletic enough. Solid route runners, really good hands. I think they're just solid all around players. And maybe there's some similarities to a Nico Collins with all three of those, or two of those other guys. So all three have their similarities. So, maybe potato, I don't know. But both pretty solid players we comped. Elijah Surratt too. And I also think there's a chance he falls to day 3, so maybe like the 4th round. I think unless he goes off in the playoffs, he gets back to full health. He's banged up right now with a hamstring. I think if that thing lingers or he re-aggravates it, it's going to cost him a ton of money, unfortunately, and draft capital. But we know there's something probably there. He's likely a good player. We'll see what happens, but some favorable comps.
Andy, you got anything for us for Surratt there, or move on?
Yeah, I mean, I'll agree with you guys. We can keep her rolling.
All right, I have an Eric Singleton comp. Are we ready for this one?
Hey, I did too. You're not gonna like mine though.
3, 2, 1. Jordan Addison.
Matthew Golden. Sorry.
Oh. No, God, no.
He's done.
Okay, never mind. No.
Fork in him.
I mean, honestly, like, the size and speed similarities to Addison are pretty damn close. Although I would say Singleton's probably even quicker than Addison is. Addison is not a slow player by any means. You see his ability to burn DBs and score touchdowns. So they both transferred schools. They both do a decent mix of in and out of the slot. So they're not just in the slot. They're not just out wide. They kind of like, I think they're both at like 60-40, if I remember correctly. and they both transferred schools, and their A dot came down in their final season for both of them. So, like, if you go, oh well, how do you like Eric Singleton Jr., John? You're always against the guys with the A dot under 9 or under 10 or whatever. It's like, well, yeah, but it was just for the 1 year. They kind of had like eerily similar careers, whereas like 1 year they were at like 12, the next year they were at 10, then 12, then 9. So it's like the comps like almost made itself for that one.
Yeah, yeah, and I think some of the same points that you made there, you could argue with a Matthew Golden, right? Very fast testing athlete, right? I think Eric Singleton will test out fast, maybe not quite record fast like Matthew Golden did, but I don't think either one of them quite play up to that play speed. Or sorry, their play speed is not quite maybe what their testing speed may be with Eric Singleton Jr. and Matthew Golden, but similar size. I think that Singleton, though, if he runs fast, he could prop himself up into pretty early, probably day 2 draft capital, right? Likely not a day 1 guy at this rate because of his poor season. A lot of that has to do with the team and kind of his role. And you mentioned low A dot. Well, that's what Matthew Golden was, especially at Houston, right, as a wide receiver. And particularly his second year. His freshman year, a little bit more explosive down the field. Second year at Houston, really pretty ineffective, not that explosive, underneath type of role, low A dot. He went to Texas, and we know that he wasn't like a stud at Texas, but he was a solid enough player. And I think that Eric Singleton, he's been a solid enough player as well at Auburn. We know the talent's there for more, so I'm not saying he's like doomed to the same potential bust status that we're seeing potentially play out for Golden, and we warned people, right? We were never that high on Golden, but I just think that there's some similarities there. And again, it's not the perfect comp out there, but I think there's been some struggles and there's some holes that you can certainly poke in Eric Singleton's profile. But hopefully Singleton's trending in the right direction after a big last week. He's going to beat up on whatever G5 opponent they're playing this week, I think, for Auburn, Mercer or something like that. Yeah, maybe some bright times ahead for Singleton.
Yeah, I did not comp Singleton. I'm really struggling on how to reconcile this year. I think that he should just come back to school and maybe even change schools. But it's been rough. So like I know he had 2 great years at Georgia Tech, but if Matthew Golden's a comp, and by all accounts, like this season feels like more Matthew Golden than anything else. I'm gonna be out on him. But I do want to sneak one more comp in real quick. Denzel Boston, and this is a recent comp. This is a guy who was drafted last year. I know that Boston's getting first round hype, but I couldn't find a first round receiver to comp him to, so I went with previous Illinois receiver Pat Bryant, who was drafted last year. Maybe Bryant's more of a deep threat, but again, similarly, had like a solid enough sophomore and junior year, and then really kind of broke out their senior year. Similar A dot, similar things with yards per route run, like never above 2 until their breakout senior year. So I just wanted to squeeze that one in, get some Denzel Boston. Not necessarily hate, because Pat Bryant's still having some games here. People are excited about him at Denver. But that's about where I would view him value-wise going into the draft this year.
Actually,
That's really good.
I completely forgot that I had I had a comp in my head for Denzel Boston, and I already told you guys it was N'Keal Harry. There's a lot of similarities with N'Keal Harry and Denzel Boston, and we think back to like how much people love N'Keal Harry, and we think about how much people love Denzel Boston. Another comp that I came up with for Denzel Boston was Cedric Tillman. Just nod or yes or no if you like or don't like the Cedric Tillman comp. But I really
had that one written down as well, John. But
nice.
I felt Pat Bryant fit better.
I like it. All right. Well, just for time purposes, I have 3 more wide receivers here. I have Eric McAllister is Quentin Johnston with hands. Yes, no?
All right. Okay.
I'll allow it.
Yeah.
Okay. So I like that one. You're probably not going to like this one, Aaron, or Andy, or really anyone that's listening. Jeremy, is Jalen Polk, and I honestly like their metrics are like eerily similar. Everything's about the same, and this is me. I'm a Polk fan. I'm a Polk stan. So this is not me like trying to be like, oh, Jeremy Bernard sucks or something like that. Like I actually like that. I don't think Polk really got his due process at New England. You know, and obviously he got hurt as well, which didn't help anything. So this is not me saying that he's a bad player. But I just wanted to get that out of the way. And then my last one, and this is one that is probably going to be controversial here. And I have two comps for Deuce Robinson. Okay, so I have a realistic comp and then I have a ceiling comp. And my realistic comp for Deuce Robinson is Darren Waller.
Okay.
Give us a ceiling.
Yeah.
But I mean, honestly, like you're looking at a recruit who was a wide receiver in college and then is probably going to end up being pushed into a tight end role in the NFL. It's got to be the way that we're leaning at this point, I would assume. And so I just see a lot of similarities in Waller and that. But my ceiling comp for Deuce Robinson, no one is going to like. But honestly,
Don't
if
say
you
Kelvin
really,
Johnson.
God, no. It's Mike Evans. It's Mike Evans.
Yeah, I figured you're going there.
And like it's not just because Mike Evans is like one of the few 6'5" guys and blah blah blah. It's not just that. If you really dive into their numbers, they're not that dissimilar. And I'm not saying that Deuce Robinson is Mike Evans. Like honestly, it would have to be the right fit and all that kind of stuff. But I don't think that he's getting nearly as much love as he should be getting, because at the beginning of the season, everyone's just like, oh, you know, big man, run fast and you know, and burn the DBs. And yet here we are, and he's still doing it. You know, they're in conference play, they're doing all this stuff, and he's getting 150 yards a game. He's actually moving up in Devy Beth weekly. This is not like a guy that like crushed against FCS players and then all of a sudden, you know, falls weekly or something like that. That happens all the time. He's not that guy. He's actually getting better and better and better. And he's a young guy. He had to transfer from USC. It's not impossible.
Yeah. Sorry, no, I wasn't trying to judge, but yeah, I just thought it kind of made sense. It's a guy who came to mind, and I know you, really like Deuce Robinson. So, yeah, I don't necessarily have another comp in mind. I did see a Nick Harbor to DK Metcalf comp this week, and I thought that was pretty silly. I just don't see it. Besides silly. Yeah, you know, I mean, big ripped guy runs super fast, like, yes, but everything else is not making sense. Now convert Nick Harbor to tight end and let him run fast. Even if he gains 15, 20 pounds, he's still going to be super fast. Like, that's fun, right? I would love to see that. He's not going to be, like, as nuanced and skilled as Gadsden, but, like, make that transition. It makes sense. But no, the DK Metcalf thing is a no for me. Not that anybody from this podcast said that, but I heard that out there.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll move on. That was all I had for wide receivers. Did anyone else have a wide receiver before we move on to running backs? No. Okay. So I came up with I want to say on the fly because it was while it was at work. It just popped in my head. I realized who Justice Haynes was. And so we'll start with Justice Haynes here. And I said, Justice Haynes is Kenneth Walker, the third, KW3. And it makes way too much sense. Like, you have a player who's definitely not perfect. They kind of like the Barry Sanders light-ish, where you get like the -3 yards, -3 yards, -3 yards, 60 yards, like that kind of thing. And you see a lot of that with Kenneth Walker. You see a lot of that with Justice Haynes. Not a lot of receiving game to either one of them, similar sizes and things like that. And I honestly think that Justice Haynes is Kenneth Walker. And when you say that, especially, then you realize where people are trying to push Justice Haynes up to. Like, I've heard a mock draft this morning where Justice Haynes was taken at like 103 or 104 or wherever it was, and it's like, man, like I don't know if I necessarily love that.
Hey, fair enough. I'll go rapid fire here. Jonah Coleman, Washington running back. I had two comps for him: Josh Jacobs or Quinshon Judkins. And I think he saw enough back, right? Kind of a little bit more of that physical bruising type of back, but he's got a little bit of wiggle to his game. He's competent enough as a receiving option as well, so you can play him on all three downs. I know Jonah Coleman, he's been trending down a little bit, right? He got banged up, so he missed last week, and pretty poor production, limited game time action the week before that. But if you kind of zoom out to his whole season and his career, he's been a pretty efficient back. He runs hard. I think he's got a good size to him. So that's why I come up with the Josh Jacobs, Quinshon Judkins potentially for Jonah Coleman.
I don't hate it.
I like it. I'll fire one off quick. Well, also, I'll just say quickly, Justice Haynes, I agreed with you pre-show that that was a great comp, Kenneth Walker. The other guy that I like, analytically comped him to potentially was Izzy Abanaconda at Pitt. I think they had very similar seasons. Izzy Abanaconda also capable of busting off the long 75-plus yard runs.
Yep.
So maybe that's more of his floor, and K-Walk is like a ceiling. But I wanted to do an Emmett Johnson comp just because I don't like Emmett Johnson. So it took me a long time to find somebody who is so inefficient and also very undersized. Aaron mentioned that he was also maybe potentially up to 215 pounds. So I got two comps. If he is in fact like 210 pounds, he is Jerome Ford. If he is sub 200, okay. I had to go way back for this one, but I think it fits pretty like a screen merchant, undersized guy who can't make any big time plays. Colorado's Philip Lindsay. And so those are the two guys I landed on, and both of them are like, I wouldn't call them, well, they're kind of plotters, but they're just not capable of the big time play, but they're also like satellite backs. They can catch the ball out of the backfield, which is what Emmett Johnson's good at. Like he's a screen guy, which that style doesn't really work in the NFL. Like you have to be good at either down the field receiving, a la like a Kyron Williams, but it doesn't really work if you can't like be effective as a runner, and then also your only other aspect is you can catch 50 balls in the backfield. So that's why I don't like Emmett Johnson.
So my thing with Emmett Johnson, and honestly, I've never even considered size. I always had him as 210, so I've never even really thought about him as like a small or scat back or something like that. I just assumed he was of size, but maybe I was wrong in that belief. But whether right or wrong, that was not something I was counting against him. But yet, when you look at a guy who is averaging 3.6 receptions per game in his career, and then you see he's just barely cresting 1 PPR points per touch. That's actually really not good. That's actually pretty bad. Because, when you're looking at that kind of receiving profile and things like that, generally you're going to get up into that 1.1, 1.2, even beyond that. Obviously we get into like Jahmyr Gibbs level and players like that, Bijan level for receiving. We start getting into the 1.4, 1.5, 1.6 level of PPR points per touch. And Andy always gives me crap about PPR points per touch, but there's a reason why I include it. And like it tells a story of who a player actually is. And so when you start combining it with other things and you say, okay, he has a receiving profile and yet the PPR points per touch are still not there. Now we go look at the big time run rate, 5.5% over his last 2 seasons. And you go, no, stop with Emmett Johnson. I don't even have a comp. He's just not a good player. How about that?
Do you have a different player comp?
I don't. Actually, I'm tapped.
I'll go next. I do have a quick thought with that. I don't mind the first one that you gave there, Andy. I don't know about the Philip Lindsay one, but like you said, I guess if he's smaller than we all expect, that's a little bit more relevant one. I actually thought that like a ceiling play for Emmett Johnson could be like a David Montgomery, a guy who's a little bit better laterally. He runs tough, capable enough as a receiver, just not really an explosive guy. And David Montgomery's kind of got into some good situations in his career where he's been able to still hold down a job or at least play a big role now for the Lions. But we saw like guys such as Jamal Williams be really effective for fantasy on that Lions squad. So that's not saying David Montgomery's some great player. And you kind of alluded to, Kyron Williams. Like, if you get into the right role, some coach just falls in love with Emmett Johnson. I could see him having some pretty relevant seasons. He's just not going to be explosive. He's very replaceable, right? But I guess that's what you guys were saying. At the end of the day, he is a replaceable talent. Who knows? He could fall into the right situation because he runs tough. He's capable enough at a very baseline level of receiving. But I have a very fun player here, Jeremiah Love, Notre Dame running back one in the class. You guys know how I like Jeremiah Love, and there's no perfect comp to Jeremiah Love because he plays in a very versatile type of role. He's explosive. He's good with the ball in his hands. I'm going to say Jahmyr Gibbs. Jahmyr Gibbs-like type of style to his game. And it's not even a perfect comp in the size comparison because Jeremiah Love has a little bit more mass and size to him than Jahmyr Gibbs, but he plays in that type of a way. Very versatile player. Should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's what you want to see. Jeremiah Love, 2.6 receptions per game, 1.46 PPR points per touch. That's what we're looking for. 9.9% big time run rate. I don't have a comp for him. I will never comp anyone to Jahmyr Gibbs because I love him too much. And I don't have a lot of comps for Love. In fact, Love is a player that I struggle with this season. Where a lot of people are pushing him up to 101 in early rookie mocks and things like that. I can't find myself doing that. As much as I like the player, I'm definitely more of like a give me 102, 103, something of that nature with Love, just because as much as we've seen him dominate at Notre Dame, we've seen a lot of players dominate at Notre Dame, and so I don't want to discount him or anything like that just because other people have done it at the same school. But I'm just kind of giving it like a little bit of grain of salt kind of deal, where I'm like, man, there's been a long line of like what 4 or 5 years here where we've just had stud after stud after stud for college purposes, but not necessarily for NFL purposes. And so I need to see Love actually get the right landing spot, get the right draft capital, all that kind of stuff, which he probably will. But as of right now, I actually do struggle with the comp for him.
Yeah, and hard to comp. Obviously, we'd love it if he was the next Jahmyr Gibbs. I'm not that bullish on him. I look at him more as like a Travis Etienne, similarly sized, hugely productive in college. Good big time run rate, good receiving profile. From a yards per route run standpoint, and that's what I like to see in a running back. I think Love is probably a little bit better than Etienne when it's all said and done, but if he's Gibbs, then that's great. I'd like to comp him to like a Jonathan Taylor or Saquon Barkley, but he doesn't have like that size, and then also the athleticism that those guys would bring. But Love, I think we're all on board with him being RB1, and he's probably going to be a very effective player in the NFL.
Absolutely. Well, I think we gave.
I don't think it's even close.
Okay. Go ahead.
Right.
I was going to say, yeah, and I don't even think it's close right at the RB2 spot, right? Just big a big drop off in this class with Love.
No.
Yeah, for sure.
No, not anymore. I mean, it definitely was at different points in the season. Love didn't necessarily start off hot and things like that. No, Aaron's telling me no. So
don't admit that, John. Don't admit that.
I mean, I never had Love. I don't think. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't think I ever had Love as not the RB1 in the class. But there was definitely points of the season where he was not doing nearly as well as he's doing right now, where he was a little bit lower than he is now and closer to RB2. But enough about that. I think we gave you guys, what, a 12 to 15 comp, something like that. Let us know what you think about these player comps. Is Deuce Robinson Mike Evans? I think that's the question that everyone has on their minds after listening to this podcast.
I can't believe you spent like 5 minutes on Deuce Robinson.
I can't believe we didn't. I think I'm not kidding when I've been doing Devy Beth for years now, and I mean, there's obviously times where I'm wrong, but Deuce Robinson is ridiculously high in Debbie Beth now. We have to see, like, he's going to be a player that I'm just gonna latch on to for the rest of the offseason, going into the offseason and the entire draft process and all that, assuming he comes out, which is another player that we can't guarantee or anything like that. But assuming he comes out, I'm gonna latch on to and I'm gonna say this is my guy, and if it works out, it works out. But holy crap, like the guy is skyrocketed throughout the season, and I kept thinking it was going to fall off at some point, and it just has not happened. So I'm willing to put my stamp on him and say Deuce Robinson is my guy now. That's perfectly fine. You heard it here first. Darren Waller floor, Mike Evans ceiling, Deuce Robinson Hall of Famer coming at you before you know it. Aaron, you got any words of wisdom for us before we get out of here?
Yes. Well, comps are a lot of fun. Hopefully you guys had a fun time listening to them. You're never perfect. Don't be mad at us. Let us know maybe some of your own comps if you have some other ideas, because it's always helpful to hear more ideas, more eyes out there for these player comps. But it's always enjoyable. Thanks, guys, for throwing out some great ideas tonight.
Absolutely. Well, it was a lot of fun. We will be back in your ears as soon as possible. I have no idea what will be coming next. If I'm in 4 of 4 C2C League semifinals. If I am in 4 of 4 finals next week, then we will have a very fun pod. If I'm in 0 of 4 finals next week, we will probably won't have a pod because I will no longer be here. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. I feel good about a couple of them, and the other ones not so much. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens there. But appreciate you guys being here, Andy. I know maybe you weren't muting because you were scared that if you mute, you're gonna be stuck on mute. No, you don't have to mute now. I'm saying maybe you wanted to give us a quick word of wisdom before we get out of here.
No, I was. You know what? I just wasn't on mute. Hopefully, you guys didn't hear anything crazy happening back here. But I think Aaron said it all. He said it all, man. He said it all.
All right, he said it all. Deuce Robinson's Mike Evans. We will see you guys ASAP. Bye, guys.